And we're back for another exciting episode of the Creators Collective. And this will be an exceptionally interesting week as we're going to have a rumble in the jungle. If you haven't been following Jonathan Katz-Moses and William Walker, they have been having a good time on their Instagrams and such. And Zach will not be with us. He is in Ohio at the Tool Make, right?
Spring Make.
There you go.
Yep.
So if you're in the area, say hi to him, and he'll be back next week. But Jonathan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
James, I'm not. That's fine. I'm Jonathan Katz-Moses. I'm not going to get into that right now. Will, this has just been going on too long. Don't laugh. This is not funny. I can't keep logging onto my Instagram and being distracted from what I do, and that's provide woodworking content for people who want to learn woodworking. So let's put this to rest. I don't want to continue this back and tit for tat back and forth. I want to challenge you to come out here to Santa Barbara, California, to the International Maker Station for a plane off. You can bring your sharpening stones, your own planes. I don't care. You can use mine. But we're going to have a plane off, and we're going to settle this once and for all.
Well, I think the fair thing for me to do would be to bring my own planes, because you would probably try to sabotage me somehow or give me hollowed out stones or something like that. But yeah, I'll accept your challenge. I'll come out to Santa Barbara. Yeah.
And you may think I'm a jerk, but I'm not. I have integrity, my friend. I would not sabotage something. I want this to be fair. I want people to see that I can beat you fair and square. So come on out here. We'll do like June or July. We'll get you out here, and we'll settle this once and for all. In fact, if anybody wants to come out to see the plane off, I'll make it the International Maker Station opening day. We'll do a grand opening. We'll get world famous rodeo clown Sean Boyd out here to judge it. And we will settle this thing. And anybody who wants to come watch this can come. And maybe we'll do something for charity and just make this interesting.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I accept your challenge. I think I've proven time and time again that I'm just better than you at sharpening hand planes and taking full width shavings with a smoothing plane. I still don't think I've seen you take a full width shaving. They've all been edge jointings, haven't they?
Honestly, one, I've heard worse from better. And two, Will, you should carry around a potted plant so that you can apologize to it regularly for wasting the oxygen it produces.
All right, guys. Well, you heard it here first. Jonathan Katz-Moses challenging me to a plane off, a duel amongst gentlemen in Santa Barbara, California, at the International Maker Station.
And we're gonna make it open to the public. It'll be the grand opening for the International Maker Station. We'll have drinks and food, and I will provide all of that. The International Maker Station we'll make it a big party.
That sounds good. Jonathan, how the hell are you, man?
Welcome Dude, I'm awesome. Will, thank you for appeasing me there. I'm great, man. Life's good. We're working on some really cool projects. Oh wait, when do we do? I watch your podcast. So when do we do? What are you working on?
Yeah, what you working on?
Okay, cool. So I have had this friend for, I don't know, a little over a decade. I used to run a live music night at this local bar, and he would play and like tear the roof off the place. And it was one of those guys where you knew he was going to be a star. And last year he was on The Voice, and he did very well. He got second place, I believe, on The Voice. And he hit me up and asked me to build him this desk. So I've been building this live edge walnut desk with wireless charging and his logo in it. And you put your phone on his logo, and that's where it charges. And he came in to the International Maker Station here and did a concert for Mark and I. And so the video is going to have like this live concert footage inside the shop, which is super cool. And it's like, it's the video I'm most excited about that I've done in a while.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome. He's got one of those special voices. He's kind of like Joe Cocker meets Etta James meets.
Hey, well, Jonathan, you've seen my Joe Cocker, so you've seen it live in person.
And Will does one heck of a Joe Cocker, man. Honestly, it was the highlight of karaoke night in Atlanta. It was a lot of fun.
It wrecked my voice, and I sounded like you at all my talks the next day.
I think everybody on that trip was doing a Katz-Moses impression by day 3. We'd go to listen to these talks all day and then hang out all night. And by the end of it, nobody had slept, and everybody was a little Katz-Moses around the edges.
Yeah. That sounds like a cool project.
It It's coming out great. I did this really cool thing with the drawer. So I made this little pen drawer. I didn't want it to take away from the live edge slab, so it's really small. But I scribed it to the edge of the slab. So if you look straight down, you don't see the drawer because it perfectly follows the contour of the slab.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool detail. It's really cool.
And the wireless charging is really cool because you have to make it so thin. Yeah. And what I did on the CNC, I did this cross-hatching pattern on his logo, and then I epoxied it. And so when you put your phone on it, it lights up and shines through the logo.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's not real woodworking. Used to CNC. Come on, man.
I used it for what it does best, which is logos.
That's cool, man. Well, James, what are you working on?
Oh, what am I not working on? I'm working on working on the bed again. This is turning into the dresser / table. But I'm actually doing all of the resawing for it. So on the headboard and footboard, there are all these panels. The panels are 13 inches wide. Well, they're a little more than 13 inches wide. So I'm actually going to resaw and book match a quarter sawn oak. So it'll be book matched quarter sawn oak in all the panels.
Wow.
But that means resawing, 25 feet of white oak, 6.5 inches wide by hand.
You're not doing that on your bandsaw, James?
I am the bandsaw.
Oh, man. Sometimes when I watch you work, I am so impressed because, one, you make fabulous results, but two, I know how long that takes. And, on a video, it's maybe a couple minutes. But I'm like, dude, that guy was sweating for hours in the shop resawing that material.
Now, most people know how hard it is, and they throw things at me.
Yeah, he's a machine. Did you ever see that we did he came out to Virginia, and I had these cherry burls, and he had just built his spring pole lathe. And so I cut one of the burls in half, and I gave him half, and I turned one on my lathe, my powered lathe, with sharp chisels and stuff. And he went back to his shop and turned a bowl out of the cherry burl on his spring pole lathe, and it was just brutal.
Yeah, that was impressive. I'm always impressed to watch you work, James. Wow, look at that. That is gorgeous.
It did end up cracking on me.
Yeah, mine did too.
But I had the pith really close to the edge because the corner right there was where the pith was at.
Yeah, so of course it's gonna crack.
I love the crazy shape on this. Is just
yeah. I about 2 years ago, milled up 100-year-old walnut tree with a buddy of mine at a ranch very close to my house, and we have all the slabs. And this guy came up to look at them because we're selling them. They're on my website, and we have them on Craigslist and stuff. And this guy came up to look at them, and he said, "Well, but they're cracked." And I had to explain to him. I was like, "You must be a little new to this, because when you saw a tree down the middle, you get this." I had to explain how moisture release works to him, and I said those are usually considered features. And with that bowl you made, James, it's a feature. You could put a butterfly key in there and make it. It'd be really cool.
That's when I dried this one. I put it in wood shavings for about 24 hours, and then pulled it out and let it dry solid. And so just tried to force dry it and make it warp as much as possible. And,
is it easier? Is it easier to turn stuff that's wet or dry?
Wet. Wait, for in general or on a spring pole lathe?
Let's make it a two-part question.
Okay.
It depends on the wood. Because I have turned like hard maple, and I actually prefer to turn that dry than wet.
Really?
I find it tends to tear out more wet.
Tools aren't sharp enough, or your presentation is wrong.
Well, I mean, like in softer woods, cherry, walnut, things like that. Those are wet. Oak is definitely wet is better.
Oh yeah, that comes off in like big, beautiful curls wet, but trying to turn it dry, and it's like you get beat up.
Yeah, I have almost no turning experience, so I'm always super interested to hear about it.
Although I always wanted to turn something like super hard, like African blackwood or something of that nature. wet.
Lignum vitae or something.
See how that does.
I bet it would be pretty awesome. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Another big thing with turning dry versus wet. So when you're turning green wood, I mean, you're taking a shower. Like it's, the moisture's like just
only on a power lathe.
Yeah, only on that. I used to on my old planer. It was in the direct line of wetness of green turnings for my lathe. So I'd spin it and turn, and then I had this line of like splatter, like blood splatter, but from the tree on the outfeed of my planer bed. And then turning dry, you build up a lot of heat. So the shavings that are coming off the gouge, if you're holding the gouge, kind of with your pinky, like with your hand on top or like this, the shavings coming off actually like get your pinky like ridiculously hot, like where you have to like stop and like shake it off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Power problems.
I know. I've always been
slowed that down and made it go in reverse every so often. It would fix that issue.
It's self-cooling, right?
Yeah, if you made it a workout like churning butter, it would be, way easier on you, Will.
Sean Fushi in the comments in the live chat says, I tune in expecting WrestleMania and Will is talking about blood splatter, grabs popcorn.
That's how Will vanquishes his enemies. He runs them through the planers.
That's right.
Now, other things I've got going on. I just did I'm actually working with another channel, Octane Monkey. He does a car channel with a lot of fun stuff on there. But we did a crossover collab where I'm actually making his logo emblem to be put on his BMW.
Cool.
And so he's going to take off the BMW circle logos and put his logo on the front and back of the car.
Awesome.
So we actually decided to try and do that as a live, and it worked out pretty well because we could do my normal live, but then have him in one of the hangout windows. And so it was kind of interesting live because there were questions being asked about woodworking and questions being asked about cars, and it was a good time all around.
That's cool. Did you do that on your hand-powered CNC?
Yeah. Actually, joking of that is on my list. One of these days I want to make one. I have the designs in my head. It's a crazy amount of building.
Right.
But the idea is you get a spindle turning upright. So the router bit is sticking up and it's foot powered. And so you're pedaling, turning the router, and then the work goes face down on the router. Right. And then you have two knobs, sort of like an Etch-a-Sketch. So you can design XY axis with that.
Right.
And spinning it with your feet. And so the idea is you have to actually still write the program of so many cranks X, so many cranks Y, and while you're pedaling. And so you write out the whole program, and then you flip it over and you see what it looks like, just like you would with a CNC, but completely foot driven.
That would be so cool. It'd be like learning to play the drums, though.
Yeah. I was going to say it's like, rubbing your belly while patting your head.
Have you ever run a spring pull lathe? You balance on one leg, the other leg is moving up and down, the other leg is trying to balance the other leg. One hand is holding the lathe in place and one hand is trying to control the tool, all while then trying to keep an eye on your angle.
Right. When you built that, did one of your legs get like way bigger than the other?
No, actually you get very good at switching mid-stroke, bouncing between legs. And so you do half on one leg and half on the other leg.
That's what she said, James. Sorry. That'll be my last dirty joke of the podcast.
No, it won't.
Yeah, Katz-moses is certainly faster than William Walker Company. That's what she said.
Yep. It's become a thing. My editor Mark likes to put in really, really, really short clips of Michael Scott giggling when I make dirty jokes, unintentional dirty jokes, and he'll put like a 1-frame clip of Michael Scott like giggling. It's pretty funny. Well,
on your latest video, your sharpening video, which is blowing up, by the way.
Thank you.
Which, congratulations! It drives me nuts. If I do a sharpening video, I get like 2 people that watch it. But that
tells you who does it better.
Yeah, right. But I like that, Jonathan, you also subscribe to the ruler trick And you mentioned just the tip about 25 times in that video. And
we made a conscious decision not to put the Michael Scott clip in there because we knew that people would do it in the comments. We're like, let's pretend that I didn't care that I said this 500 times. And then if you look in the comments, it's like half the comments are just the tip comments.
Yeah.
So,
so James doesn't subscribe to the ruler trick. He thinks you just flatten the back, and I say it's a time saver to use the ruler trick.
I
really
only
is.
flatten the back once, and then it's done.
Right, and then you just take the burr off when you sharpen.
One quick stroke on the strop, and it's done.
I can get behind that. I think the reason I like the back trick is that I know in my head that it is done, and it freaks me out when I sharpen if I feel like I didn't go all the way, and I get really worried that I'm selling I just took all my stones out, got water, took the time to sharpen, and I didn't do the last step. I wouldn't even be able to play, and I would have to go back and do it. Like my woodworking sharpening OCD.
See, I did the ruler trick for a while, and then I lost the ruler. And now I don't.
I have an old Japanese saw blade that I use, which occasionally I forget is sharp on one side and slice one of my fingers open. But that's thin enough that it really just is super quick.
Yeah, I feel like it's also getting somebody that isn't familiar with sharpening or who had never done it or who have never felt what a sharp iron feels like. I feel like it's a better entry, easier level of entry for somebody that's just sharpening for the first time.
It's more foolproof because if you do accidentally round the tip lifting up the blade or something of that nature, it just allows you to clean that.
Yeah, and for me, the reason I've done a few sharpening videos is all of us, probably our audience is skewed towards beginner intermediate. Maybe James is a little bit more expert, but the general viewing audience on YouTube is more beginner intermediate. And I tell people, I'm like, you have to learn how to get it sharp. That is the most important thing. Yeah. If you're going to have a good time, you have to get it sharp. And there's many ways to do that. But that's why I kind of do these long sharpening videos, because I want people to understand, one, it's not that hard if you follow kind of a set of rules, in your head, which is the same angle and, doing certain things in a certain order. But it's just, guys, it has to be sharp and you will have so much more fun, like cutting dovetails, planing, all of that. If it's sharp, you will have more fun. And I try and really impress that on my audience.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to fight your tools, and a dull iron is going to give you more tear out. Mm-hmm. A dull saw, you're not going to have fun cutting dovetails. A dull chisel, you're just not going to get much done at all.
That's actually one of the things I tell a lot of my audience is that one of the big reasons that hand tools disappeared is that sharpening disappeared. Mm-hmm. And with power tools, there's two things you have to learn. Number one, you have to learn how to set up the jig to run the power tool. Mm-hmm. And you have to know how to dial that in. And number two, you have to know either where you can send the blade to be sharpened or where you can buy a new one.
Right.
With hand tools, you have to learn two things. Number one, you have to learn how to sharpen it. And then number two, you have to learn how to use the tool.
Right.
And it's very similar, but it tends to be more skill driven as opposed to more mathematical setup.
Right. And one thing to add to the blade part of this is, if anybody is listening who has power tools, get a bottle of Simple Green. Your blade is not dull, it is dirty. And clean it a few times and then get a new one. You will save yourself hundreds of dollars over the course of a year, and it makes the most massive difference. I learned that trick. I would always get alcohol and a steel brush, and then Sean Boyd one time said, "Oh, just put Simple Green on it."
Yeah. And especially if you're working like pines and softwoods.
Oh my God.
Gums them up instantly.
Oh, all the pitch in it. Yeah.
I have a sign in my shop that says no reclaimed or construction lumber for that reason. Because, my neighbor always shows up with like a 2x4 and goes, "Hey man, do you think I could run this through the planer?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, man. I'm not cleaning my blades for that 2x4.
Yeah.
So Will, what you got going on?
Oh man. I'm all over the place. So my sister's wedding is this weekend.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And she's marrying a super awesome guy. They're our next door neighbors, and it's like, I've got another man in the neighborhood now. So that's cool. In true procrastination Walker fashion, she waited till yesterday afternoon to ask me to print her like signing guest book thing, make a frame for it. And then while she was in my shop, she saw the media console that I'm finishing up for tools today, and she asked what's going to happen to it next. And I said, well, after I'm finished the video, I'm going to sell it. And she was like, oh, that would be a great wedding present. And I was like, that would be a really nice wedding present. So, and my mother-in-law's in town helping with our baby boy Callum, who's 6 weeks old today, and getting ready for the pool that we put in last fall season to open. I have been in like full like get the yard and everything ready. So I totally regraded my backyard. I tore out a retaining wall, seeded, strawed, raked, planted wildflowers on like steep inclines. I am getting ready to put a new stair system off of our deck down to the pool. Yesterday I was laying flooring in the basement that I just finished, or in the middle of finishing because my flooring's not done. All while trying to make money woodworking and get stuff done in the shop and make videos. And I've been totally scatterbrained. So I feel like I've been doing a lot, but I can't tell you exactly what I've finished. So
sounds like you're trying to do the decathlon, but all the events at once.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. It's like I change gears, like, all right, that's done, and then I change gears and like go lay flooring, and then I gotta go put another coat of finish on this, and then I'm also making a knife. My sister doesn't listen to the podcast, so I'm making a knife for their kitchen knife for their wedding present. Out of 1075, it is now hardened and tempered. I need to clean up the blade, put the scales on, sharpen it, and make a box to put it in.
That's it by this weekend. That's easy.
Yeah, right. Like just get it done now, right?
That's awesome, man. Usually I love this trick. On Amazon for $35, you can buy a Damascus steel 10-inch kitchen knife blank. That is really, really cool. I mean, they do a really good job, really tight swirls in it. It's beautiful. And then I just put nice scales on it and put some, oh my God, what are those brass pins called?
The mosaic pins?
No, that you put in the handle to keep it on there. Oh my gosh.
Just the pins. You just pin it.
Okay. Yeah. And I pin it with brass pins and it blows people away. Take a couple pieces of offcuts and glue them together and say it's a cutting board and knife set. And that's my go-to gift. And people are blown away, and it costs $40, because the rest is all scrap wood.
Well, I wish I had known that, before I made the knife and before the wedding was, in like 3
days.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's what I've been working on. And, I get up at, I go to bed at 11. I get up at 1:30, 3:30, and 6:30.
Yeah.
So
I'll be with you there in 3 weeks.
Yeah. 3 weeks, man.
3 weeks, man.
Oh,
baby is coming.
Man. Well, I see a lot less feuding posts on Instagram from you in 3 weeks.
Oh no, I'll be less sleep, angrier, more volatile.
Is that number 2 for you?
Number 1.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah, that I know of.
The fun.
Yeah, that you've sired willingly on purpose.
Oh man, yeah, I'm super excited. James, any tips?
Get really well at sleeping through all the sounds.
Awesome.
Nothing wakes me up at night. It's so nice.
Well, then your wife will be mad at you because you slept through it all while she wakes up and deals with it.
She finds it easier to get up and take care of than it does to wake me up.
Yeah. You need a cattle prod to wake me up some nights.
My wife is not too quick or not too slow to smack me in the face with a pillow if I'm not waking up when I'm supposed to, or if I'm like snoring or something.
Yeah, well, smacking you is something that your wife and I have in common.
Oh, nice dig. That was a good one.
Yeah. I thought we'd settled this beef, but I had something bubble up inside me. Hey, by the way, something you said when you were talking about what you were working on led me to a question. And if I'm derailing things, please stop me, guys.
No,
how do you handle, what is your technique for handling those kind of requests when a friend or a family member says, hey, I have this really easy thing. Do you think you could, and it's one, you see it, it's not easy. Two, it's going to take hours, maybe days to do. And, it's somebody you like. What's your technique? Because I recently had somebody who asked me, hey, I just have this really simple thing, and it looks like a massive undertaking.
So I learned this a long time ago in my photography business. Charge what you're worth, even if it is friends. So I know that, I get where you're going after. I get that question a lot. The people kind of leaning in, like, I wish I knew somebody that was a woodworker and could help me with this thing that I can't find and, custom build it. And then I go, okay, yeah, let's talk about it and look at the project. And I'm like, okay, well, that's at least, 2 or 3 shop days, to be, $1,000, $1,500, something like that. Yeah. And they go, oh, wow, I was thinking like $100. And I'm like, well, find somebody cheaper. I don't know. Like,
I get into the same thing. And part of what happens to me, is I have lived in this town for a long time, and I know a lot of people. And so people know what I do. They see my Instagram, and I'll have people come by the shop and check it out, because it's this really cool place. It's like a 3,000 square foot warehouse. And then hey, I'm going to stop by, I'm in the area, and they bring wood with them. And then, it's like, I get into these situations where I want to be helpful and I don't want to say no. But, I think a lot of people who have tools get that. Like, it's hey, you have a truck, right? And then you're like, yeah. Oh, I'm getting asked to help move here. And my answer is like, yeah, you can borrow it anytime.
So another thing, so if it's a good friend or somebody that's done me a favor, one of my good friends, Joe, has this saying that I guess his dad told him is never be afraid to do someone a favor, but also never be afraid to cash one in.
Right.
So like, he's like a guy, hey, I'm building this stair system and I need, another set of hands that, knows kind of what they're doing and not some green newbie that's going to drop a 2x12 on my head. He'd be like, yeah, man, let's do it. And then, maybe in 2 months he'd say, hey, I got this job coming up and I really need, whatever. Then, it's like, well, you did help me with that. So I'm happy to help you with that. I recently had somebody, it was like a friend of a friend. Hey, like, your friend's a so-and-so, and he says whatever. And I've got this project. It would have taken me by myself maybe an hour to do it. But he really wanted to be part of the process, and he like didn't know anything about woodworking, but he like wanted to, be a part of it, to say that he had his hands on it. And I said, okay, well, shop time is $50 an hour. And
that's fair.
Yeah.
That's super fair.
And then he was here for 4 hours. So it cost him $200.
No, I have the easy way out when someone brings something to me, because I actually, just like last week, I had someone want me to build them a hall table. And they had a really simple design, just like a shaker, 4 legs, a skirt, and a top.
Right.
And they wanted it just out of simple pine and stained. And I thought, oh, okay. So I said, okay, well, if I have power tools and I did it with pocket holes, I could probably whip one out in a day and have it ready for you. It'd probably be about 8 hours worth of work for me. But I don't. I have hand tools, and so it's probably going to be somewhere between 30 and 45 hours worth of work. And so once I actually start to list out what all it actually takes, then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, then no. And I just make them feel bad by listing all of the things that I have to do with hand tools, and they usually back off.
And I mean, you really do have the, hey, that's going to take me 72 hours excuse.
Yeah. My excuse is, it takes time to track down the material. It takes time to design. It takes time to actually get the joinery done. It takes time once I apply finish, unless I, set up my finishing room, which I totally stole from you, Jonathan.
Good.
The painter's plastic, the whatever, big rolls of plastic. I'd stapled it to the floor joists above me in the ceiling of my shop.
That's awesome.
And just have a booth that I can, set up where I can have a finishing station, then get back to more work, and then not
worry about getting sawdust on it. You know what's really cool that you can buy if you ever want to make it a little bit more permanent is zip walls. I'm sure you've heard of them, but it's a construction thing that they use for sealing off areas for dust. And they have these poles that extend sort of like a spring clamp. And you go up and then you spring clamp it a little bit and it's real tight. And they have these zippered walls that, you can buy in whatever 8x10 sheets and they zip together. And they're not that expensive. We're talking, $50-$60 for a kit with poles, and you can get 4 of them and make it a permanent sort of finishing room that's very easy to take down.
That's pretty cool. I'm going to look into that because right now I just have it I've got a scrap of whatever long thing I had like poplar and a piece of scrap maple that I just stapled to the bottom of the plastic, so it was easy to roll up, and then I just hold it up there with a spring clamp.
That's what we did. Funny story about our finishing room is we are 30 miles south of the windiest point in North America. And this is what we call the windy season because the wind just gets really intense in the spring. And so I went home one night and we had like 70-mile-an-hour winds, and it blew our whole finishing room with it had like 2x6s rolled into it, blew it off the loading dock over the fence and ended up in the street, and just it's gone. There's no saving that thing.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Is that, you guys are in Santa Barbara? Is that the Santa Ana winds that you guys get, or is that?
Those are in the fall. That's the heat coming off the desert, and that's what makes our wine grapes so good in this area. Okay. Is that it stays warm at night and never gets too cold in the fall before harvest. But during the spring, we get the northwestern winds, which are pretty good for surf. They make pretty good surf, but they can get really, really strong. And we've got Point Conception, which is the furthest most point.
There's a baby joke in there.
Yeah.
Point Conception was about 8 months and 1 week ago.
Yeah. Oh.
Jonathan Katz-moses.
We have a question from the audience.
Ooh.
Alec McMahon.
There you go.
McMahon.
That's how you pronounce that.
Oh, it's an H.
McMahon.
McMahon. Yep.
Any tips for storing lumber outside? I've got a bunch of already dried walnut that I need to keep outdoors. Any tips? Do I just throw a tarp over top of it?
Yeah, I would cover the top, but leave the ends open. I wouldn't completely encapsulate it. Because you don't want it to get too hot in there. On a hot day, that tarp would act like a sauna if the ends weren't open.
Yeah, what I do is I get it up off the ground. You don't want any ground contact. And you want to make sure that whatever you're getting it off the ground, whether it's cinder blocks or anything, are level. You don't want to introduce any twist into your stack. And then I use stickers, which are just sticks that you put in between each layer of row of boards.
Separate them about a 1/2 inch to 3/4.
Yeah, and then that gives you good air movement through. And then I use roofing metal sheets on top and put a little weight on top to keep the roofing sheets down. And I overhang it, so the rain doesn't get to it. But that's what I use for keeping things dry and not too hot.
Yeah, I've got about 60 slabs up in San Ynez, and we basically do the same thing. We have we built like a simple structure, a couple 4x4s with some roofing metal just over the top of it. We've got them sort of stacked off the ground and level. Levels, you want to try and go for level, because your wood, whatever those stickers are off, it's gonna do that over time. So Wood is not, once it's dry, it doesn't mean it's not going to move anymore. So you want to make sure that your stickers are all cut from the same cloth.
Yep.
The only thing that I do slightly differently is I will put a tarp or a sheet of metal on top of the ground. So if there's any rain, it doesn't splatter dirt up into the stack. Because that dirt will, anytime you run it through a planer, that's where a lot of nicks come from.
Yeah, if I was hand sharpening all of my tools, I would definitely make sure dirt didn't get on the wood too.
Oh man!
Actually, I have a friend in Pennsylvania who his entire job is air drying lumber.
Oh wow!
And so he has, guessing like 20, 30 acres of just stacks and stacks and stacks of lumber that's been drying for a decade or more.
Wow.
But he has these rigs set up, and they're basically a big bag that he will slide a pallet's worth of 10-foot long lumber into. And they have it's a tarp on the bottom and then a tarp on the top, and then the sides are screen mesh material.
I've seen
that
those.
Animals don't get into them and the splattering mud doesn't get into them.
I've seen
the
those.
air still flows through them nicely.
When I was stacking, when I was milling some, I had a mobile mill come out and I was milling up, and the guy sent me a link to those bags, and they were super cool, but I was being cheap. But there is a follow-up question to that question from Mike. Is it Tabar? So he's going to buy some rough sawn walnut and hard maple for a trestle table build. My problem is doing it when it's not raining. What effect would 1 hour exposure to moderate rain on the highway have? Something surface moisture.
Yeah, it would be moderate exposure. I've driven with wood in the back of my truck many times while it's raining. And because of the way the wind is going, you're never having water just sitting on it. So it's not just puddling. And really just bring it home and let it dry in your shop for a couple days. You'll be just fine. I would really invest in a moisture meter. In fact, James a while back did a great video with moisture meters, I believe. That right, James? That was you?
Yeah.
With the pin style moisture meter.
It was a great one, but I did that.
Well, James produced a piece of content anyways that had moisture meters in it. And it was really good rundown. I actually bought one based on his recommendations that wasn't the pin style. It was the moisture that read through the wood. That one's way better. It's like $50 on Amazon. I'm sure James can put a link in the comments. But I highly recommend it. I use it all the time because what happens is you develop a baseline for your shop and you go, my shop wood should be at 10% or 12%. And so when you transfer wood from another location to your shop, you can figure out when it's shop ready and you know that it's acclimated. So it's a good investment for anybody who's doing this long term.
So I actually have a question about this. So I obviously have a big stockpile of wood in my shop because you always find that perfect piece of wood that you can't live without, that you don't have a project for. So you get it anyway and you put it on your lumber rack. So I've got just a ton of wood that's acclimated to my shop. And usually if I'm buying a bunch of stock, it's going to sit in my shop for, a couple weeks while I'm finishing another project before I start that project. And so it's well acclimated. But what do you guys do when your shop relative humidity is different than the final home it's going into?
I think you have to plan for that.
It's called good joinery.
Yeah. I mean, you got to plan for that. If I'm sending a piece of furniture from here to, in fact, I am sending a piece of furniture from here to Nashville. And I did the dovetails on the drawer much looser for that reason, because
the humidity in Nashville is going to be a lot higher than Santa Barbara, right?
Oh, I mean, Santa Barbara is pretty low humidity comparatively, except we are by the ocean. So, and my shop is about half a mile from the ocean. So it's like we get a little bit. But my point being is that my dovetails are much looser than something that I would produce for somebody locally.
Okay.
So it just took a cursory Google search, I guess, and doing a little bit of figuring. But wood typically only moves about 1/8 of an inch over 8 feet or 4 feet or something like that. Or it's 1/8 of an inch.
Well, it depends on the moisture. If you go from pure dry to outside and soaked, you can get 1/8 inch over a foot for most hardwoods, like oak.
Right. But you look at a hardwood, the old school hardwood floor, thing was 1/8 of an inch per 4 feet or 8 feet or something like that of room on the edge of the room that you're installing the hardwood flooring. So, wood isn't, if you build a 1 inch jewelry box and send it to, Florida from California, it's not
for
gonna,
really small earrings.
yeah, it's not like
cool.
you're mailing a bomb to somebody. It's not going to explode, when it gets there. But you want to take into account and give yourself a little bit of room.
Yeah. Good tips.
And also think about how the wood's going to move. It moves across the grain, not really with the grain. So you want to look at your joinery and say, how is there another way to approach this where I can, orient boards the same way and casework, same thing, it all sort of wraps around and then it moves together,
Right. Yeah.
So
good question. I just thought it was a good question to talk about on the podcast for anyone listening.
No, I think it's one of the biggest concerns. I feel like there's this overblown concern about wood movement. Like,
Did you guys hear that sound? I think my table just blew up.
It's true. I mean, every time I post a video, some person who says, "Hey, I'm new to woodworking. Aren't you concerned about this exploding and killing somebody?" And you're like, no, wood moves together. It moves together. And when you have opposing forces, that's when you would think about it a little bit more. But if I'm doing casework, man, it's like, yes, it's going to move, but they're all going to move the same. They're all going to expand and contract the same. And that's what things like breadboard ends are for and things like that. But guys, it moves one way and then it comes back, 2 seasons later. And it's not, I've never had a piece of furniture fail. No matter, from the first one I ever built to the one I made yesterday, nothing has ever failed on me. And I've never been that concerned about wood movement.
I've had one fail, but that was one of the first things I built. I was like 8 years old, and it went from being in an air-conditioned shop to being outside in the rain.
Oh, well, that'll do it.
Yeah. Was anybody hurt?
No, just cracked.
Oh, okay.
Just the person that tried to sit on it, right?
Yeah. No, it was a bird feeder.
Well, you're not supposed to sit on bird feeders anyway.
Yeah.
Well, no, I put the I basically stop dadoed in a board into another board cross grain, and so when it expanded, it cracked the board it went into.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, where are we in life, James?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about. Well, we did questions. Oh, okay. Joke of the week. Oh no, Creators Photo Challenge. Because next time we have a thing going on for "Do You Love Me" or "Do You Cactus?" Which, if you don't know, you need to go back and listen to the last podcast. And so we're looking for pictures that describe "Do you love me" or "Do you cactus?" And we've only had 1 or 2, and one of those is William's.
Yeah,
I saw that.
I'm still trying to win this stupid thing, and
I have
your odds of winning are really good.
Yeah.
What's that?
I have a submission for joke of the week.
What's that?
Will Walker's planing.
Oh, that's a deep dig. That hurt a little bit. That's cool. I take full width shavings with a smoothing plane, so
Mm-hmm.
I take shavings that are wider than full width.
That's impressive. I'd like to see that. He just looks at it and stares at it.
I take full width shavings with a block plane on a 12-inch wide board.
That's all right.
I basically just stole James's joke and made it longer and worse.
Well, along those lines, what do you guys call a can opener that doesn't work?
What do you call it?
A can't opener. Let's see what's been inspiring us. Will, what you got?
Shoot.
Fine. Well, you're thinking I'll go.
Okay, you go.
I know I've mentioned the channel before with the Marble Machine X on YouTube. He made a marble machine that created music a while ago, but it was really kind of a junky thing that didn't quite work, but it was enough to he could make a song out of it. And so he's remaking it and calling it the Marble Machine X. But it's a couple year long process. Well, he just put out a video yesterday, and he has the full cycle of the marbles running on it now. And it is absolutely gorgeous to watch. I'm just a piece of art watching this thing moving marbles around little bit by little bit. Just yeah, it's one of those channels. As soon as he puts out a video, I'm there watching it. It's phenomenal channel, and so much inspiration in there in mechanical movements and how you connect things and how you problem solve. There's always an interesting idea in there to learn something new. So definitely worth taking a look at.
Yeah, I follow along that build as well, and it's so unbelievable the way that guy's mind works and the way he solves problems. It's so neat.
Yeah, his original Marble Machine video is over 100 million views.
Whoa.
So it's a solid video.
Yeah,
I gotta check it out. I still haven't checked it out.
You haven't? Oh yeah, definitely. This is.
Oh, as a musician,
You'll be subscribing instantly.
Yeah, you'll lose your mind. It's
unbelievable.
And he collaborates with a lot of people, which makes it super cool. You know, he has other machinists build parts and solve problems with him. It's so neat.
That's cool. All right, I'm gonna have to check that out.
I think it's like 79 videos in the current build series for this. And he probably has another 20 or 30 to go before the thing's fully done.
Oh, yeah. And he's like a really unique guy. He's just so like lovably weird and funny.
He's
and
Norwegian living in France.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And he's the perfect example of what you would imagine an engineer and prodigy musician would look like.
Yeah.
Like the cross between an engineer, a rock star, a Norwegian French guy.
I feel like it's like, the perfect way to describe, there's people like with those brains that just like they work a little bit differently than yours, like that they see in numbers and like.
Yeah, if there was a montage of his life, it would just be like him staring into the distance as numbers popped up over his head in pi and the Pythagorean theorem.
I'm pretty excited because my son was born on Pi Day, 3/14.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of jokes about that.
Well, what you got, Will?
Okay, all right. This is probably stupid, but I've been inspired by myself. No, the latest video that I did, was it was just super simple. It was about tips with CA glue and blue tape. It was so the Wood Whisperer Mark Spagnola had put out a video a while ago just talking about the benefits of blue tape and CA glue instead of carpet tape or double-sided tape. And I adopted that, and I totally love. I think he's totally right. It's just easier to peel it off, and it works really well. So I took that, and I took Mike Pekovich's laying out dovetails with blue tape trick, and I made a video on it about some different ways of using blue tape and CA glue, and it's my new favorite way for inlaying butterflies or bow ties or dovetail keys, whatever you want to call them. And just getting back to simple tricks like that made me just kind of happy. So I wasn't inspired by myself, but I always like, oh yeah, that is a cool trick that other people should know about. So that's what I got. And James looks like Powder. Is that who you look like right now?
This podcast is so cool. I had to put on my shades.
Oh yeah, me too.
What about you, Will? John, what you got?
So lately I've been inspired by a couple things. One is there's a guy named Mike Boyd who does this thing where he learns a skill, a brand new skill that terrifies him, or he's been scared to do or whatever. And I work so much. I work 10 to 12 hours every day, and I do that 5-6 days a week, and sometimes much longer. And one of the things I'm always looking to do is how to hack my brain and learn how to be more efficient and learn how to remember things better and be more organized. And Mike Boyd, he's gone recently from just learning to juggle or solve a Rubik's Cube to all these sort of brain hacks where he says, this is how I hack my memory, and this is how I hack my productivity.
Memorize 100 words of pi.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of what made me think about it when Will said Pi Day, is that was so cool. He did that in 8 hours? He memorized 100 digits of pi. And so that kind of stuff I really like. And then Lars Christensen, who has the Fusion 360 CNC channel, I have decided in my head that I'm going to become a Fusion 360 expert. I find it I find it so valuable. And, you know, I just got a laser. I got a 150 watt laser. I have the CNC and I love that stuff. And I'm always so sad that nobody wants to watch those videos because I think it's so interesting. But I use it a lot for my prototyping and developing of my products. All of my products go through the laser or the CNC or somewhere in my shop. So learning Fusion 360 has been a heavy priority on my list.
So I would watch all of those videos. So if you do it, I'll watch it because I want to learn Fusion 360 because Make or Break Shop just put out a video why Fusion 360 is so much better than SketchUp, and I've heard it from other CNC people. But back to your laser, are you going to mount that laser to you have an Invendables X-Carve, right? Or is it?
No, I have an Axiom, which is a much bigger machine. Because okay. I use the CNC. It makes all my dovetail alignment boards, so that thing's running a couple hours a day. The laser is 150 watts, so it's massive, and it's got a 5 foot by 4.5 foot bed.
Oh, so it's not just the laser; it's the whole laser.
It's the whole laser. Yeah, I had this Chinese company reach out to me, and so we worked a deal, which I desperately needed one because that's how I engrave all my jigs, and so. You know, now it has the capacity to engrave almost 250 jigs at one time, wow. Which is a big deal. But it's the size of a Yaris. I mean, it legitimately is the size of a Yaris. It is so big. And we almost died getting it here. I really underestimated how big it was.
And for any of our older listeners that aren't familiar with a Yaris, it's about the size of a Yugo.
Yeah. a legitimate Volkswagen Beetle. Like, it's that big. Not quite as tall, but it's that big. And we got it here in a U-Haul, which is terrible for moving heavy things because it has no tie down hooks that are hooked to the frame. So we just essentially had this thing tied down to sheet metal, driving down the freeway at 55 miles an hour. And then getting it out of the truck, I had to steal a neighbor's forklift. It was an adventure. It was an adventure, but we got it here and it's awesome. And it's cool. Really awesome. Sorry, I really rambled there. Go ahead.
Well, let's get on to our favorite tool of the week. Since you're talking, what's yours?
Mine is the Wood River block plane. I just got it, and it's as nice as any other nice block plane, but what makes it unique is it has this cantilevered lever cap. So when I need to take the blade out, I don't have to unscrew anything. I can just lift up on the lever cap, and it has this like cantilevered mechanism in it that is spring loaded, and it just lifts up, and I can take the blade out, give it a quick sharpen, put it back in. It really has sped up my block plane sharpening process and adjustment process.
Now that lever system was developed by Stanley, and if you can come across one of those old Stanley block planes with that one, they're very expensive. I mean, they're a block plane that rusted and in poor condition is still selling for $60.
Whoa.
And they are the coveted block plane.
Huh.
And I was very happy to see that Wood River took that design because it is a very good one.
It's beautiful and it works so well.
It feels good in the hand too.
Yeah, it's an 1.5 inches, so it's really wide block plane. I really like that. I've really enjoyed having that extra width.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Will?
Well, I have to go with the Katz-Moses dovetail jig.
Oh, let me send that.
Oh, yeah. The Katz-Moses dovetail jig. Jonathan was cool enough to send me out a couple of them to try out, and they're just nice. They're super nice. Even if I'm cutting my dovetails freehand nowadays, they are just a great tool. So I think you did a video with Sean Boyd, didn't you, where he cut his first dovetails ever?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Will. It is really so neat to hear it when people say that, because it really makes me feel great, and I really appreciate that.
Well, and the fit and finish on them is just really cool. So he puts a lot of work into them, and they're pretty sexy looking. So,
well, thank you. And actually, it's really sorry. Go ahead, James.
It is the only dovetail jig I have in my shop.
Oh, well, thank you. It's really very cool for me. Recently, there's this new local technology museum, and it's this massive place. It's a nonprofit, very well supported by the community. They released a 6-month exhibit on the dovetail jig and me. It was really cool. They had a big unveiling. It was neat.
I saw that. I saw you posted that, and I was like, that is cool. That's really cool.
It was quite the proud moment for me. I like to, well, I mostly am a humble person, and it really gave me a lot of pride. I felt pretty good about that. That was neat.
Very cool.
Well, I think that about does it for this week. Am I missing anything? I don't think I am. So if you want to follow us, feel free to follow us on whatever your favorite podcast is. We do record live every Thursday here on the Creators Collective YouTube channel. And I want to say a huge thank you to Katz-moses. Definitely go take a look at his video on his channel. We've got a link to that in the description. And I think that about does it. So until next time, have a magical day.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you having me.
Thanks for coming on, Jonathan. See you guys.
My pleasure.